Ooh. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Santita Jackson Show here on AM 950 Radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota. It is a joy, indeed, an honor to be with you. Once again, I want you to meet me on Facebook slash Santita Jackson and Friends. Yeah, that's how you do it. Facebook slash Santita Jackson and Friends. That's the only place where I can get friends, everybody. Please meet me there. I'm on X at Santita J on X. Please be my friend, be my friend. When you see the profile, that's when I had big hair. I change things around. I do. And then, of course, I am here on YouTube, the Santita Jackson Show YouTube channel. Please like and subscribe. It's wonderful to be here, but it's a tough moment, everybody. It's a tough moment. I'm talking with my friends. Hey, Bernadette, sending you so much love, girly girl up there in Maine. That's right. I want to talk with you about what's happening in the Middle East. We talked about the reporting in the last hour, but we've had these shootings over the past few days. And the New York Times even said the pro Palestinian movement faces an uncertain path after the DC attack. Some people have said that these attacks in Washington, D.C. and in Boulder have imperiled the movement. I was watching Anderson Cooper last night. Jonathan Greenblatt of the Anti-Defamation League was saying the same thing. I saw Jake Tapper and others saying that on the news. And I said, well, it was very interesting when I was reading Fairness and Accuracy in Reporting. And let us be very clear. All of these deaths here and overseas, we want them to end. I don't want killing here. I don't want killing over there. I don't want it anywhere. It's got to stop. But Elias Rodriguez, when you really read his manifesto, he was very pointed in taking exception with Gaza, not with the Jewish people. And I think that we're growing up in our politics so that many people really do see they've separated Jewish people from the actions of those who are committing these horrific acts in Gaza and the West Bank. But let's talk about this. It has this movement that has really taken on a life of its own, the likes of which Kathy Kelly, board president, World Beyond War. Hope we one day will have World Without War. I do. But we have to think beyond it. You're right. World Beyond War. Colleen Rowley, former FBI special agent, indeed. She came into our consciousness as one of Time's 2002 persons of the year, because she had the courage to leak a memo, or to have a memo that she wrote. It was leaked. When she said, wait a minute, 9/11 didn't have to happen. Didn't have to happen. 3,000 plus people died. Oh my goodness. And both of these women have become heroines of mine because they have spoken truth to power at a very difficult time, a time in which sometimes, my friends and I who are on our way out of the country, American citizens, each of us, many people are rethinking leaving the United States, Kathy Kelly and Colleen Rowley, because we say, now, wait a minute, will we be able to get back in? Because that's beginning to happen. And so we need to talk about this. What about this movement that has the president of her class at MIT, who was denied the opportunity to walk across the stage and get her degree because she was supportive of the Palestinians? That's the atmosphere that we're in. Many are being denied their degrees. Many are being blacklisted from getting their jobs. Yeah, for those people who support Palestinian rights. And that's not to the exclusion of wanting Israeli security. That's a false choice. It always has been, at least for those of us who love freedom and who will not rest. It's always been a false choice. My father has often said Israeli security and Palestinian justice are married to each other. The Bible puts it this way: lions and lambs have to lie together. God has prepared a table for you in the presence of your enemy, because guess what? Your enemy is God's child too. All of those things are true. So, what about this Palestinian movement as we're watching uh, World Beyond War? And we're watching Veterans for Peace. We're watching so many people, hundreds of groups around the country have come together to fast for 40 days, focusing on peace. Does the New York Times have it right? Or do they have it wrong? Will the movement go forward? Hey, Bernadette. Hey, Robert. Sending you all so much love. We want to hear what your thoughts are. Let me start with you, Kathy. And what's on your mind today? I mean, do you think that the movement has been imperiled because of these tragedies?
Well, Santita, I think we have to hunger acutely for every person to be separated from weapons. No person should be picking up a gun. No person should be taking a life over the issue of where a border is drawn or which politician has their hand in your pocket, in my view, and in the view of World Beyond War, and really so many of the Veterans for Peace and their allies who've declared this fast have an unwavering allegiance to the unnamed people day in, day out now, who are slaughtered by the U.S. provisioned massive killing spree Israel's government and military has been engaged in. And I think, as we mourn loss of life and feel outrage, surely our humanity demands that we feel utter outrage when families that are sheltering in a school, sleeping in the classrooms and the courtyard, are attacked with an aerial attack. Children are burning. And Santita, I know that you and Colleen would remember Kim Phuc from 1972, the child who was the iconic child who was burned by napalm. And she became quite the ambassador, really, for peace. But I have to ask myself, when a little child, 5-year-old Varda Sheikh Al Khalil, is similarly silhouetted in flames. There's a viral video that shows that child on fire in the tent. Now, mercifully, she survived, but 31 people minimum were killed in that same attack. How can it be that young Kim Phuc, in her suffering, in a way helped end a war, and we relentlessly see pictures of children burning, and it doesn't start a ceasefire? So, as we worry for people in the United States, let us worry for what's happening in this country to people's mentality and emotions. Are our emotions becoming frozen, imprisoned, poisoned? It's really a time of grave concern.
Colleen Rowley, we're not, well, we have a real problem. Some lives are more important than others, or worth more than others. It, or so it appears. Colleen Rowley. Oh, you're on mute. Okay. Unmute. There we go. You're there. No, no. Now you went back to mute. Now you can unmute yourself again. Okay. All right. There we go.
Well, let me just make a few comments. Yes, you saw the rise in anti-war movement during Vietnam, and you don't see quite the same thing since 9/11's post 9/11 wars. Even though, similarly, look at Vietnam. What is it? About 3 million? They think about 2 to 3 million people, civilians, were killed in Vietnam. I've read that 5 million civilians have been killed or died as a result of the wars in the Mideast since 9/11. So it's not numbers. I think the difference, and this will go back to when Santita mentioned FAIR, the coverage, the media coverage has been so different from Vietnam. In Vietnam in 1960, around 1968, you had Walter Cronkite, who everyone trusted. He was the trustable media, and he said, we can't win the Vietnam War. There was a draft, and people got mad. They got more and more mad as this went on. Those are the differences. And you saw that because of the growing outrage, the media was forced to cover the war in Vietnam. That's not at all the case with the genocide of Gaza. Some alternative media covers it. Democracy Now! Covers it. We've seen a little bit more on public television, just a slight bit more. But FAIR has done a great job of showing this very subtle manipulation, propaganda manipulation. For instance, they'll talk about the deaths, but they'll make it seem like there's no reason for it. And they'll never even mention the word Israel. You know, in our fast vigil, I quickly made some signs that said, stop arming Israel's genocide. Because the word genocide was outlawed from the very beginning. Within 1 week, who was it? Blinken inadvertently in the very first week used the word genocide. He accidentally said it. And then he got berated, and they said, don't ever say that word because it has legal consequences. And so, yes, they refrained from it, and then they stopped our media from using the word. And so then you had the International Court of Justice. And let me just add that besides being an FBI agent, I studied international law when I was in law school and spent the summer of 1979 in The Hague at the World Court. I listened to all these international law lectures for the summer of 1979. And you know, if we had law right now, if we had international law and it could be enforced, we would not be seeing this desperate breakout of, frankly, senseless violence, really unproductive, counterproductive, horrible violence that's breaking out. But we're seeing that. It's understandable because people are very desperate and they're outraged and they don't know what else they can do. JFK, everybody remembers this very famous quote from JFK. Those who make peaceful revolution impossible will make violent revolution inevitable. And then Martin Luther King had his kind of twist on it. And he said, a riot is the language of the unheard. So as our government tries to suppress speech, and they're this close to passing laws that equate any criticism of Israel as terrorism, as anti-Semitic hate speech and terrorism. Now, when they do that, I wish JFK and other smart people could be, you know, we had some people like that in government right now that could warn, don't do that. Do not suppress speech, because all you're going to do is ask for more violent responses. That's what happens. When you're oppressed.
Colleen Rowley, I need you to stay on that point, because I don't think that people really understand where that can go. I mean, that every action merits an equal and opposite reaction. Talk to us about that.
Yes. I reread the story of Nat Turner. And of course, all these 100+ years later, the situation and the dynamic has greatly changed. But when you have extremely oppressive situations, you know, as a ethical matter, morality, silence is complicity. So even on the Holocaust Museum, the sign says, do not be a victim, do not be a perpetrator, but most of all, do not be a bystander. And I used to give talks about this and say, now does that make sense? You know, why would it not be worse to be the perpetrator than to be the bystander? And I said, the only thing I can come up with is that there are many bystanders. There's only a few perpetrators. And, you know, if the bystanders would not be complicit, so we are from probably earliest Sunday school, we're told that murder and mass murder are the most terrible things. And frankly, it's why I joined the FBI, We saw those FBI shows on TV with Ephraim Zimbalist Jr. saving little children from kidnappings and all this. That's why I joined. I wanted to be on the side of justice and public safety for people. And, so now when we're forced to witness this, guess what? And people have different emotional levels of coping with this type of thing. And some people can't think, and I'm just going to add one more thing. I post about the fast on Facebook. I post, I'm in a fast for 40 days. I'm only eating 250 calories. It's day 13 and I'm getting a little hungry at this point, whatever. And I post that and I have people on my Facebook saying, is that all you're doing? Why can't you stop the genocide? That's ridiculous. You can just go back to your own life. You're not doing anything. I'm being criticized. I even volunteered for that Gaza flotilla a year ago. I've filed a lawsuit against our senators and congressmen who voted for genocide. And I'm being criticized because people know this is genocide. This is killing children. And think that there is, unfortunately, I can't think of too many better ways either. But, there is no easy way to end this other than getting all these bystanders to do something, as happened at the end of Vietnam.
I wanted to welcome to the platform Rush Darwish, one of our leaders, really, in the Arab American community, Arab Americans Forward. And I want to know what your thoughts are. I've got, two of our beloved heroines here, Colleen Rowley and Kathy Kelly. She is, of course, from Beyond War. Kathy Kelly, brilliant, and brave former FBI special agent, but she's done so much work just for peace and the service of that. And we're talking about really what the New York Times says is a very difficult moment. They said now these two shootings, and they are tragic, that have occurred over the past couple of weeks, and which free Palestine has been shouted, which now people are trying to turn into an epithet. Unbelievable. That it's making it more difficult to support Palestinian justice. What say you?
Nothing, to be honest, Santita, is difficult. I think there has always been a group of people that are anti-Palestinian, that are pro-genocide, who are desperate, and I mean desperate, to come up with any type of a talking point to distract all of us with what's happening in Gaza. And yes, I think we can all we could say it over and over, and we mean it, that what is happening, what happened in Colorado, tragic. What happened recently in Washington, D.C. is tragic. But I, as a Palestinian American, understand what is truly happening back in Gaza. And we are talking about hundreds of thousands of people that are starving, that are near death. We are talking about over 15,000 children that have been murdered. We are talking about over 10,000 mothers that have been murdered. And I think for myself, these are hard facts on the ground that I refuse to be respectfully distracted or change my position based on a couple of rogue crimes, which is what they were, rogue crimes against these individuals who, to be honest with you, these are not the folks that committed the crime, one in Colorado and the one in Washington, D.C. We don't know these people. They're not part of any of our movements. They're not elected officials. They're not part of any organization. So they are criminals, and that's exactly what they are. And I think we should all just remain focused on, sadly, the genocide. And I believe that that is what we all need to do. And we understand, and I understand that there is going to be pushback. And I know that there's a level of desperation by what I would say the pro-Israeli front that want everyone, and I mean everyone, to forget about what's happening in Gaza. And they desperately want you to keep that spotlight on what's happening in, what happened in New York, or what's happening in DC, or what's happening in Colorado. It's not going to work. It's simply not going to work. It might be temporary, might work, but I'm not falling for it. I don't think Colleen is. I don't think Kathy is. we just have to remain focused on, a tragedy that's happened. And I want to just say this. I heard Colleen say she's fasting for Gaza. And anyone
As
that
is, as
questions
is
your
Kathy
effort,
Kelly, as is Kathy Kelly.
Kathy, God bless you as well. I just caught Colleen, but first of all, God bless you. And nothing hurts us more. And I know, Santita, you've been there as well too many times. When you give your heart to a cause that matters to you, and you are trying to do good, and you're trying to stand up for what's right, and then you have a universe out there and people you may even like that will try and bring you down. And just know that you are doing the work, and never ever feel that those are people that, even though they might be even your friend, but sadly, progress breeds enemies. And continue doing continue fighting, continue doing the good work.
Well, Colleen Raleigh, I'm just trying to, and Kathy Kelly, I'm trying to figure out how it is that people would take umbrage with what you're doing, Colleen Raleigh. I don't, I don't understand that.
They're not taking umbrage so much as they're also very the feeling of helplessness. The feeling of helplessness is a precursor to depression and, frankly, suicide. The 22 veterans a day that are committing suicide because they felt like they were complicit with these horrible horrors that occur during war. I know all about this. I've studied psychology a lot. And I think that's what's happening here. People want to have an easier solution, and they don't understand the dynamic right now. The dynamic is the power. It is the United States. Someone, a head of a peace group in where was this? New Hampshire, I think. Chicago. Chicago. It's a Chicago peace activist. He said the United States is the sugar daddy of Israel's genocide. And then he said, well, maybe I should call it the genocide, the sugar genocider or something. He changed the word. And that is the thing, is this, we are a powerful country and there's no accountability so far. In fact, the United States now has gone after the International Criminal Court, and they've sanctioned them. They've stolen the money from the prosecutor. I mean, it's incredible. And just to echo something that Rush was saying, is that when you have this kind of a dynamic where the power is really the power, by the way, the polls will tell us that the people are not quite buying all of this, no matter how much media screams at us that Israel has a right to defend itself and all these little talking points. No matter that, the polls are showing that people in the United States are really against this genocide. Now, what do you do when you're on the opposite side and you have to keep it going? Because they have to push the people out of Gaza. And then they have to go after the West Bank. There's a long-term agenda here. And when they have to do that, then they find these ways. And certainly they jumped on these last two violent episodes of violence. They jumped on them. And I even had some friends thinking they were false flags because they were so perfect for that kind of propaganda, like you say, to distract us from the real problem here, which is that really hundreds of thousands of children have either been killed or wounded or lying under the rubble at this point. It's terrible. It really is terrible. And our media doesn't cover it. So the average person out there who only watches Lester Holt, who's now gone, or, he was the new Cronkite, Lester Holt, and he never, ever went into the situation of the genocide. Never. I don't think the word genocide ever passed Lester Holt's mouth. He never said it. And that's where we're at. And people want it to be easier. They want an easier, quicker solution. But unfortunately, I mean, again, I've thought about these things, and filing our lawsuit was pretty good because we filed a lawsuit directly against all of our congresspersons and senators in Minnesota, with the exception of one, only one, in Minnesota Nice, only one did not vote to arm Israel. I sent off 11 complaints official complaints and summonses yesterday in the post office to all of them. The only one is I don't know where Lloyd Austin lives. So I got to find where Lloyd Austin lives because I don't know who to mail it to. And the other one is our Minnesota Congressman Dean Phillips, who ran for president, and he was for the genocide. And I don't know where he's moved to because he's quit. But other than that, we're proceeding. And I thought that was a pretty good idea because it's directly against the people who are our government. It's basically our government supporting it.
So, I mean, so what do we do? I mean, because it seems as I'm looking at legacy media, corporate media, Kathy Kelly, they're at odds. Rush Darwish, and you know this, Rush, you are a long time media figure. TV, radio, you've done it all. You know that this is not the message that they're pushing. And even the pundits that they bring on television. I've seen Nina Turner, who's a very dear friend, I must disclose. Of course, she was head of Bernie Sanders' organization. Brilliant sister. And when she has come out there supporting, really just looking at something balanced, Israeli security and, Palestinian justice, I said, will she get invited back? I mean, because this is where we are. And so now I'm looking at the New York Times. They're saying, well, you know what? This is going to make it very hard or make it more difficult. It's going to be a tougher road to speak up for Palestine. I mean, this child was burning. I didn't even know, Kathy Kelly, that she had survived. It was just, I can't unsee that picture of that child. I said, are you serious? And I'm like you, Colleen Rowley. I said, wait a minute. As a little girl of Kathy Kelly, I remember just as a little girl, this girl who'd been burned with napalm. That image is seared in my brain. But no one is talking about this child. No.
Yeah, because it's the truth, Santita. The reality is this, especially the Western media. We are talking about over 70 years, actually close to 80 years of an occupation. We are talking about a Western media that is deeply, deeply influenced by the pro-Israeli powers that be. And we have, I would say in the last 10 years, there's been a turn in the world of social media where everyday people, including people who live in Palestine, have captured these horrific scenes, injustice in motion. And it is our job, and it's not going to be easy. It's extremely difficult, but we are the ones that are what we call that upswell of a grassroots movement that are saying, wait a second, you are not telling the truth. And this groundswell movement is not, you will never have the money that some of these networks have. We're not even going to come close. But I will say this, things are changing, at least from the standpoint, Santita, where the media at least has to show the images. For many years as a Palestinian, they wouldn't even show, not even one image. They wouldn't even say the word Palestine. So they are now at least forced, keyword forced, to have to acknowledge that there's actually some murders that are happening. They have to acknowledge that, hey, just recently, which we all know, that an aid station in Gaza, Palestinians were lining up to get aid, and Israeli forces were literally just target shooting the Palestinians that were in the line, killing 33 Palestinians. And I'm telling you guys, in the 80s and the 90s, those kind of atrocities would never even be reported. So headway's being made, but we have a long, long way to go because you are going up against a machine unlike anything we've ever seen.
Well, we saw it, because you could not mention, we had the no talk policy. I'm a little older than you, Rush. And the no talk policy, you could not mention. I say that and I'm very glad. My father said, if you don't like birthdays, try missing one. I'm glad I've had a lot of them. And you could not mention the proper noun Palestinian. When I look back, Kathy Kelly and Colleen Rowley, that Reverend Jackson ran for president advocating for Palestinians, when I went by to see him one day, and he was sitting in this chair, and he was getting ready to go out, and I just leaned over and kissed him. He said, "Well, what was that for?" I always kiss my dad. And he said, I said, "Either you are the bravest man I know or the craziest." I think I'd just been put off the radio station in Chicago. I said, "You've been doing this since 1978. Because you went in 79, but I met Yasser Arafat in 1978 at the World Youth Festival in Cuba. And I came back so enthusiastic. I said, Mom, Dad, he invited me to Lebanon. This is so Kathy Kelly and Colleen Riley. I was excited, Rush. I said, this is going to be great. And it was, I think my parents were like, well, that would be a no. You may not go. My mother said, but I will go first. And then Dad said, and when my mother came back, my father said, okay, now we will go. Oh, my Lord. We have known no peace on that issue since then. But that was all right because it was the right thing to do. And so we've seen, nothing, we had to bend this arc. And we're still having to bend it. Kathy Kelly, we're having to bend it. We're the ones, Colleen Rowley, who are having to make this happen. It's not just going to happen. And so even as I'm looking at the New York Times and everybody, I mean, did you see what happened to Chuck Schumer, everyone at his book signing at the New York Public Library? I mean, like half the audience shouted him down one by one by one by one by one. It was your thumb, Colleen Rowley, your thumb is up. Why is your thumb up? You rabble rouser, you. What is it, Colleen?
No, good for shouting out down Schumer non-violently and keeping on. I think that is one of the answers here is keeping on, and being, persevering. And it's a very difficult, but don't give up. That's the key.
But where do we go from here in this moment? How do you have this fast? I mean, how do you advocate as what's the right way to go about it? Rush, anybody can jump in on this.
I will say, and I would obviously like to get Kathy's take as well, but the key is, as Colleen mentioned, is there's this attempt, and that doesn't mean that I'm being insensitive, but there is now an attempt by, even New York Times, which at some point was starting to come around when it came to this, genocide that is happening in Gaza. But the reality is this: you had a couple of really bad incidents that have happened here in the United States. But at the end of the day, we all have to have an understanding that the root cause of why things happen always must be under examination. And I know the media, especially the Western media, will always want to glaze over the root cause. But if you are not going to acknowledge that there is a historic, brutal genocide that is happening and that the United States is funding it, please forgive me for not being overly sensitive to some of these very unfortunate crimes that are happening here in the United States. And for the people and the media outlets that want to shine a spotlight on this, of what's happening, they have every right. But at the same time, we have every right to stay vigilant, and we have every right to continue talking about the truth. And the truth is there's a genocide. And if you can't acknowledge it, then that's your problem.
Kathy Kelly, what say you?
Well, Rush, I'm glad that you are saying we need to stay with some of what has been accomplished. And it's hideous to think of people lured to get nutrition being targeted in their heads, in their chests, and their arms. I mean, these were targeted killings, and at least 31 people had been killed. And can you imagine? Missiles were coming from tanks. The Navy was firing on people. Drones were firing on them. It's not even sunrise yet. They had assembled thinking maybe they could, help their families by being ahead of the line, and people were slain. They were wounded. And don't think there were ambulances or that there was a functioning hospital. The Red Cross had set up a field hospital, and good on them, but it's kind of primitive. And people were putting corpses and wounded bodies in donkey carts and there's no donkey. They were wheeling them, trying to get them possibly into survival mode or to bring them toward a dignified, if possible, burial. But how soon did you hear about that? Dropside News was covering it immediately. Al Jazeera was on top of it. And so the others, the bigs, had to come on board. And now we find that the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation might be something like the dock that was constructed. Forgive me, I don't remember how long ago, but they were going to do some kind of salvific thing with this dock, bringing in, and then the dock blew away. Weather kind of did it in. But these kinds of foolhardy, utterly violent efforts, they represent the big think tanks being 10 steps ahead of us. That's true. But those 10 steps are mired in the quicksand of cruelty. And I believe people in the United States are going to eventually wake up. You know, we've now got 700 people having joined this fast, probably more. We get messages from Hong Kong, Germany, Ireland, Canada, and Australia. And, we each do what we can. And of course, if there's criticism, we should always try to be listening and respectful and try to understand where is the criticism coming from. But I think when we come from a space of believing we must put forth before people the victims, particularly the children who've committed no crime, and then immediately ask the question, okay, are Boeing and Lockheed Martin and General Atomics and RTX committing a crime when they provide the weaponry to both lure people into situations where they hope to get food when they're starving and then kill the people as they congregate? And that's not even looking yet at the horrible cage construction, which surely must remind us of what happened in Auschwitz.
Colleen Rowley, you studied international law. These children are being, the IDF, they're aiming at the heads of these children. That has been established. They've been shooting to kill them. That has been established. What recourse do we as an international community have? This is unbelievable. I mean, they count what 50 plus thousand people. It's more than, it's triple, quadruple that. You got people under the rubble. The Lancet study already told us they expect 500,000 deaths. That's a fifth of the population. Are you serious right now? But you're aiming at the heads of children. You're saying, okay, come and get your food. The food is here. They're lured to get the food, Colleen Rowley, and they kill them once they get there. What?
Yeah,
and I can't get these people to report that.
They're using food as a weapon, which is very similar to how the Nazis used food to get the Jewish people onto the trains to go to the concentration camps. They would give them a loaf of bread, and that would say, if you get on this train, you'll get a loaf of bread. It's the same problem, same thing that's happening with the use of food as a weapon. Killing civilians. International law is actually not everything is established by international law. It is just some very basic, low standards that the whole world has been able to agree to. Geneva Convention, that we don't torture captives, we don't kill civilians, we don't commit genocide. These are extremely low bar. These are not things that are detailed or whatever. And when the power in the world decides we don't have to follow the law at all. I will quibble with one part of that one New York Times article. There was a New York Times article where the woman, I forget her name now, the author, but she kind of said both sides. Well, the Palestinian movement has some radicals in it. the Anti-Defamation League says that they're encouraging by having any kind of nonviolent opposition to Israel's genocide. That is encouraging the radicals that will perhaps take the law into their own hands. That's what the Anti-Defamation League is trying to say. And yes, New York Times, they kind of went both ways. The one thing that I would quibble with in the article was it said that the Palestinian movement says that it violates international law because there was a United Nations General Assembly resolution back in the 70s, I think. Oh my gosh, it's a lot more than one General Assembly resolution in the 1970s that said genocide was wrong. I mean, that little piece of that article is very wrong because they're trying to make it seem like, well, the Palestinian movement just has an idea. They just think that it violates international law to kill children and civilians. That is absolutely wrong. And again, this is where the frustration comes when there is no international law. I mean, I even listen to a lot of foreign policy. You know, they're always on the global chessboard, like a Mearsheimer realist. You know, well, we do this and they do that, tit for tat, blah blah blah. And the thing is, with a genocide, you can't go into that area. It violates law, and it's the end. Problem is enforcing it, and it will be enforced eventually. I don't know if anyone listened to Ann Wright about the newest Gaza flotilla that is on its way, a humanitarian. I tried to volunteer for this a year ago. They've been drone bombed. They've been bombed before. Probably they'll be torpedoed and bombed again, probably. And at the very least, they will be drone bombed. And there's a lot of people, there's a few people on this ship that are trying to get humanitarian aid into Gaza. And the thing is, they're actually following the law. They are the ones following the law, not the people that drone bomb. Now, eventually, this will get sorted out. It's just that when we're in a state of kind of confusion right now, and anybody can say what they want, and the New York Times can write things that are wrong, trying to correct this misinformation, you know. And that's, if people know the situation, yes, it's very high. The polls are very high that people are against this. And if people would vote against their senators and congressmen who are pro-genocide, you know, that will happen too. In Minnesota, we had 19%. We were the second highest state with the voting uncommitted because of the genocide. We were the second highest, 19.
And I mean, and the fact is, no one knew about uncommitted because people, let's be frank, in 2024, people were looking for alternatives because because people are still furious. Kamala Harris lost on that. I mean, they can say whatever they want to. Beyond President Biden's issues, she lost on that, and that was a big deal. You know, I don't know. I know we're getting closer. Kathy Kelly, you have someone with you from Vets for Peace?
You know, I thought that I did, but Mike and Ken were going to try to hop on. It's a little difficult to get online.
No worries, but we will talk about this more.
You know,
I mean, because yes, Rush.
Yeah, well, Santita, you know, I know we're talking about solutions because we all agree that this is overwhelming. You know, this is overwhelming, and a genocide is supposed to be a process and a system that's not limited only to the what I call direct killing of a civilization, but it also trickles down and puts all of us in a position where we are not able to sometimes function the way we need to. But the way we must approach it moving forward is we have to now look at the electoral map. And let me take you back here to Illinois. We currently have 3 open congressional seats here in Illinois in the Chicagoland area. And let me share a story with you all. There was this congressman named Bobby Rush, and he was, he wasn't really pro-Palestinian, but he was actually pro-Palestinian, but not as far as we needed him to go. But he was on our side. But here's the deal: he retires, and this person named Congressman Jonathan Jackson, I think Santita knows this guy pretty well. That's her brother, by the way. He ends up becoming the next congressman and becomes a great advocate for the Palestinian people. Currently, the 3 vacancies that are in the Chicagoland area, all 3 of them, we would put them as, I would put them as leaning against the Palestinian cause, meaning in your face, they will hug you, they will tell you they care about you, but when you look at their voting record, it is very obvious that they vote what we call party line. But this is how you change things. Yes, we may not have the muscle to elect a president, but we do have the muscle to go into a region like into Illinois and look at a couple of these seats that are, by the way, open seats. They are open seats, open candidates all vying for it. And this is where you can do what I call steal a seat with the right level of advocacy, the right type of funding. And this is how you will have the ability to change the narrative. It's going to take years to do it. But hey, about 30 years, you had 0 congressmen that were pro-Palestinian. Now I believe you have 13. And here in Illinois, there's no doubt you can turn that into 14, 15. And every cycle, there's congressional races. And every cycle, there are open seats. And this is your path to victory. Not easy, but very achievable. However, this is where it becomes the coalition and mobile organizing together. And yes, that is extremely difficult as well. But if you want the playbook to victory, my friends, this to me, in my humble opinion, is the playbook to victory. You got to take it one race at a time, one election at a time. And you know what? Not because it's my home state or my home city. Let's start with Chicago. 3 open seats. Let's go.
Blossom where you planted. Colleen Raleigh, that's what you're doing. Kathy Kelly, we have to do that in Chicago, but we have to do that in Minneapolis, St. Paul. We have to do that throughout Minnesota. We have to do it in Maine, Bernadette. We have to do it in California. We have to do it wherever we are. Because Kathy Kelly, it is winnable. We're not where we were 10 years ago. We're not where we were before October 7th, quite frankly. The tide completely changed, Kathy Kelly, after October 7th. I think they were expecting one narrative to come out of this, and something completely different, the complete opposite happened.
Well, Santita, I'm someone who can remember going to hospitals in Iraq in the 1990s, before 2003 as well, and looking at pediatrics wards that were death rows for infants and thinking, we can't get a single media outlet to cover this. It's the best kept secret in the United States. It's quite different right now. You can find in Chicago in every neighborhood, and even in some of the, forgive me, but somewhat sleepier, smaller towns outside of Chicago, larger groups, growing groups congregating and saying, up with this, we will not put. And so I think that anyone who would be willing to give Rajna Krishnamurthy a good challenge, do it. Keep your eye on Abdul Nasser Rashid, who's in Uptown in Evanston that can challenge Jan Schakowsky. Jan had her good moments, but we need people who will be strong and clear and brave on this issue. I think we'll find them. And so thank you, Rush, for holding forth these seats. And Santita, I'm sure looking to see, might you decide to make a run for it?
There we go, Santita. Are you going to announce now?
No, I'm looking at you. Hello, what you going to do?
Who are we looking at?
You.
Let me tell you guys, in this ward where I'm in what they call the 19th district, and we have, which you may know, his name is Congressman Sean Casten. With redistricting, he became our congressman, and we worked with him. We knew that he was, leaning as a, pro-Israeli, and we worked with him. We invited him to events. We thought things were coming around with Congressman Casten until October 7th. And then we saw that all his talking points were Republican talking points. You know, Hamas hiding behind civilians, and he wouldn't let that go. And now with Congressman Casson, they shut down every town hall meeting he does. They shut him down. However, the reason why I respectfully did not mention his race as a seat to go after, because when they did the redistricting, it is what we would call a purple district. It's a center-right district. And I'm not saying it's impossible to win, but Congress is a user, and I would say it would not be a seat, at least right now, I would go after. It would be too hard to win. But these open seats that are open, that is where you'd have a better chance to get one of those seats.
Well, look around. I mean, because look, they need representatives, you know, and just look around, because I think we're really, you know, you never realize that you're in the moment until, you know, maybe you look back and say, wow, this is where we were. And I think a lot of things have changed. There's been a sea change. And I think that we are mature enough in our politics and spiritually to want Israeli security and Palestinian justice. But Israelis won't be secure until Palestinians have justice. That's just a fact. And so I don't think that the movement is going to go anywhere, everybody. I think things are going to proceed forward. I'm going to get closing thoughts from everybody. Let me start with you, Rush Jarwish. What's the path forward?
Yeah, and I don't want to reiterate this. First, the path forward is stay focused. And no one, and I want to repeat this, no one is condoning or supporting, nobody's supporting what is happening when these crimes, and that's what they are, these isolated, and I mean that, these are isolated crimes that are happening on the ground, and they are dangerous, and it is to some degree, or it is a degree, and I want to be careful here with my wording, that these are anti-Semitic attacks, and we have a responsibility not to say, oh, you deserve it, or this is what you get. No. We do have a responsibility to say, yes, this is wrong, but we must rise up and stay focused on the root cause of why this is happening. And number two, we have to strategically plan better. And it doesn't sound sexy. It doesn't sound entertaining, but we need to have a game plan. And the game plan should be look at races that are winnable with open congressional seats. And they are. And this is where if you can raise $2 million for a seat, you'll have a shot to win. You don't hear me say the word U.S. Senate. We have a U.S., Senator Dick Durbin retired. But you don't hear me talking about that because I know that we may not have the bandwidth to raise $15 million. But I know we have the bandwidth nationally to focus on some races, and this would be the best path forward, Santita.
But what you do have the bandwidth to do is register people to vote. One of the things that the Jackson campaigns of 84 and 88 showed you is that he said, I have a poor campaign with a rich message. He got, guys, I think each vote cost about 99 cents.
I got to share really quick, and I know I don't want to take everybody's closing thoughts. About 3 months ago, the Orland Park, Illinois, the mayor, we wanted a ceasefire resolution. He said, nope. He said, go back to where you came from. You're not getting the little Palestine. You're not getting the Palestine resolution, the ceasefire resolution. Well, guess what? 2,000 Arabs in Orland Park, Illinois, ended up registering to vote, all brand new voters. And guess what? The new mayor comes in, who's very pro-Palestinian, and he won by 2,000 votes. Case closed.
Wow. See? Look, people power. You don't need the money. If you have the people, you've got the power. Kathy Kelly, before you go, and I'm going to close out with you, Colleen Rowley, how are you feeling? Because you and Colleen Rowley are on this 40-day fast, and hundreds of people thankfully have joined in. And thank God for that. How are you doing, and what's the path forward?
For me, follow the young people. Keep an eye on these very brave and smart young people. And I do have to say that I went to a walk-in clinic because my blood pressure had cratered for 3 days in a row. And this woman read me the Riot Act and said, your organs are going to imminently fail if you don't start, or some organ will fail. So I have upped my caloric intake. I was taking 250 calories a day, and now I'm going to have a second smoothie. So I do want to acknowledge that, Santita. Thank you so much for including me today, and I will certainly stay with the fast until day 40. But I guess because of my age and my beginning weight, it looked like I should perhaps have that second smoothie. So I'm going to do that.
Well, no, but you are making the sacrifice. I mean, the fact is, I know my mother went on a complete fast when she was arrested in Vieques, and it almost cost her her life. She almost went into complete organ failure because she was not taking any. And that's when they rushed her out of the prison. They said, no, we don't want to lose Mrs. Jesse Jackson here. But the thing is, we're doing what we're called to do. And what you're doing is inspiring. And Colleen Rowley, the marathoner on 250 calories a day, bless your heart. What do you want us to know?
I don't know if you can see this ugly green liquid that I'm drinking. Your friend Ina recommended Suga juice, and
Okay.
it's a mixture. Yeah, it's a mixture of kale and some fruit. It's not horrible, but it's nothing I would ever drink unless I was trying not to have any calories. So I'll tell you, day 13 is not it. Not the first few days I was working out. I even did a triathlon. I lost about 10 pounds already, and but I was feeling okay for about the first 10, 11 days. But now I am starting to feel it, and I'm going to try to hang on because I luckily do have extra weight. And so I'm going to try to hang on. I wrote all the days down on the calendar. I count down so I can look at every day and count down to the end. And but I'm going to try it as long as I can. If I do go, if for some reason, if I go down way below my normal weight, I will probably have to change. But I'm going to try. And again, I'm going to try to get more people involved because again, it's a symbolic thing, and it's just one of the things that we can be doing. There's all these other ideas, and keep everybody thinking and persevering here because we got to end. I totally agree with the people criticizing. We got to end the genocide. We've got to end it. This is unbelievable, and that we have to witness this in our lifetime. I never thought it would come to this actually, and to be a part of it, to be our country, to be a part of it. So keep on keeping on.
Well, you keep on keeping on because I can tell you, getting this close to the edge, Colleen Rowley and Kathy Kelly and all of those who are fasting, it gives you the empathy. However far you get into the 40 days, you can imagine what people have been doing for 400 days. Right? Because this is, I mean, I remember watching this movie Soul Man, and I'll say this as we go. It was a popular movie that came out, I think, in like 87, 88. And this young man took some pills so he could look black so he could get a scholarship to go to Harvard Law School. It's a really hilarious movie. But he was found out at the end of the movie. And James Earl Jones, the law professor at Harvard, asked this young man, have you learned anything? He said, how did it feel to be black? He said, sir, I do not know. Because when I'm tired, I can become white again. Let's think about that with Gaza. Think about that. And just know that no one deserves to be treated this way. No human being. This is evil. It's evil. It's wicked. And we are fighting a spiritual battle. There's wickedness, spiritual wickedness in high places, and we have to win. We have to win, everybody. You don't treat anyone this way. May God bless you all. Colleen Rowley, my heart, my love is with you. Kathy Kelly, and all my veterans for peace, all my people up there in New York, my heart, all my love, it's with you. Rush Jarwish, my heart, my love, it's with you. And all my morning stars and all the people in the listening audience, viewing audience, my heart, my love is with you. Everybody like and share the show. May God bless you. AM 950 Radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota, the Santita Jackson Show.